Does the new Halloween film kill it, or should you run away in terror? A little bit of both. Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watch Your Past, and it's spooky season, which means all the horror movies are coming out. And I'm here to talk to you about probably one of the biggest ones this season, Halloween Kills, which is releasing in theaters and on Peacock on October 15th, 2021. It's the follow up to the 2018 Halloween film, which is kind of like a reboot, I guess. It kind of brought Halloween into kind of a more modern age. And so that was actually a very refreshing, fun take. I liked the idea of it. I liked, that it had Jamie Lee Curtis. I liked that it kind of flipped the whole horror slasher film on its head, where now you had maybe Jamie Lee Curtis was the one kind of setting the trap for Michael. And so I thought it was a very interesting film. This movie is less interesting, but I'll go into that. I'm going to talk a little about the film. I'm going to talk about the things I like, things I didn't like, and then go into the ending. So, as you can imagine, this will have spoilers. If you don't want to know anything about the film, stop watching this. Go see it on October 15th. It's in theaters and on Peacock, so you can go to theaters if you're comfortable. If you're not comfortable, you can stay home and stream it. And then come back and watch this, or you can check out the review on watchyourpast.com, which is vaguer, doesn't have any spoilers. But let's just get right into the film. So, this movie actually starts pretty much right where the first film left off. So in the first film, not the first film, the 2018 film, Laurie, who's played by Jamie Lee Curtis, traps Michael in her house. Like in the basement, she has a whole elaborate trap set up, and Michael gets stuck in the basement, and then she sets the house on fire. And you're like, okay, it's all done. No way he can survive that. Well, surprise, Michael survives it. So as Laurie, her daughter Karen, and Karen's daughter Allyson are all being taken to the hospital because Laurie has a big slash in her stomach. You see a bunch of firemen go to the house, and because there's a fire, they try to put it out. And as you would imagine, this lets Michael escape, and then he has kind of another new rampage all across the town of Haddonfield. And so then the film is basically about Michael's new rampage and the town kind of coming together to vigilante justice him, stop him, I guess. It kind of has some mixed messages, but the film is basically Michael killing people and then the town trying to rally against him and a lot of them dying. That's basically Halloween Kills in a nutshell. The first thing I really like, and one of the first things you notice about this film, are the 80s callbacks. The film starts with kind of some classic reimagined scenes, like some classic scenes that would appear at home in Halloween 1978. So it's got these scenes have film grain, they've got some older 1970s fashions. So it has these kinds of grounding scenes to put you back into the original series shoes, and then also give some of the characters that are getting more prominence in this film some backstory. But it doesn't stop with just these kinds of film throwback scenes. It has a really good 80s style opening with some 80s style text and some 80s style jack-o'-lantern effects that really evoke the classic film. And I really liked how this started. It made me think, okay, this is going to be an interesting, classic throwback. Maybe have some camp in it, and it does. It does have aspects of that. These callbacks don't just go to the style of the film. It also has some 80s movie tropes that kind of come away in modern times. It was fun to see them back. You've got people that make really bad decisions. They go into houses alone, they split up, they have weapons, but they don't ready them quick enough. They don't pull the trigger when the killer is right there, or they make very, very dumb decisions. They don't check all the doors, they don't lock their doors. You have a lot of those kinds of classic horror tropes in this film, and I thought that was kind of a fun touch as well. This film really does try to evoke the classic Halloween feel. The second thing I really liked are the characters. You get the main character in the 2018 film, Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie, Judy Greer as Karen, and Andi Matichak as Allyson, and also Will Patton as Officer Hawkins. But then you also get some new characters introduced as well. You get some classic Halloween characters. There are some characters in this film that were in the original 1978 Halloween. I thought that was awesome. They either had them, the original actors, in those roles again, or they had people who were playing those characters as well. And so I thought that was a really fun touch. I thought that, again, this film tries to ground itself in the original Halloween uh, movie mystique, and I really liked that aspect about it. The third thing I really liked is the gore. The film is very gory, as you would expect from any sort of modern horror film, and especially an 80s throwback film. there's a lot of blood and there's a lot of very brutal kills. I mean, Michael is an efficient killer. There's gore, there's more gore. There's a lot of very brutal kills, and Michael's kill count gets pretty high in this film. So you imagine there's a lot of that, and it's all done very well. It uses good practical effects. I don't really think there's really any CG. There must be some CG, but it's not noticeable at all. It's a good kind of classic horror feel for the kills as well. So things I didn't like as much. The first is, I'll call it the lack of scale. And this is kind of part and parcel with the callback to the original Halloween films. You know, the characters talk about the original Haddonfield boogeyman, the original crime where Michael killed, I think it was 3 people. And they talk about, they talk about it in very hushed, that was a tragedy kind of tone. And I thought that that was interesting until you look at Michael's kill count, and he kills 3 people in like the first 5 minutes. It's not actually the first 5 minutes, but I think I counted up his total kills, at least the ones I can remember, because there are a lot of them. And I think his kill count was in the, hold on one second, 11, 13, 14, 17, 19, 20, 27, probably 28, at least two dozen, at least, if he gets maybe 2 baker's dozen, that's probably about what it was. He killed 11 firemen at the home. He killed 2 old people in their home randomly. He killed 1 kid in the park. He killed 3 people that were pursuing him, which included Nancy, one of the original members of Halloween 1978. He killed 2 other men in his childhood home. And then he killed Cameron, who was Allyson's boyfriend. And then Lonnie, Cameron's dad. And then he kills the entire mob that was pursuing him at the end. He also kills Karen, who's played by Judy Greer. So that was like 28-ish, maybe a little more. And so when they're talking about, like that original tragedy of 3 people, I was like, that, like, you've already surpassed that. He's already tripled that in his first scene where he kills an entire first responding fireman truck. So it just didn't really, it felt a little off. Maybe that was part of the charm, but it felt weird. And it felt like there were, I don't know, it's weird to say this, but it almost felt like there were too many kills and that they didn't really mean much just because there were so many of them. The second thing I didn't love about this film is the pace. This is a very slow film at times. It starts off pretty exciting when Michael, I guess, slaughters an entire fire brigade. But then after that, it's very slow. The kills slow down, and it's a lot of kind of exposition and also hunting of Michael. And hunting scenes just aren't that interesting because it's just them looking for him, and occasionally they'll find him, and then you have maybe an exciting scene, but then it goes back to either the hospital scene where they're talking about the pursuit, or things that just don't really get your blood moving in a horror film. And that's kind of what I was hoping for, a good old style slasher. And so that caused this middle to just slow down and not really feel like much was happening. And I found myself looking at my watch, and this film isn't very long, it's about 100 minutes long, so kind of expected to keep the excitement going the whole time, keep the tension up, and it just didn't do it. The third thing I didn't love about this film is kind of the disconnect between the camp and the seriousness. I couldn't decide what this film wanted to be, and I don't think the film could decide either. It had a lot of really great 80s callbacks and a lot of good kind of horror movie camp, but then partway through, it starts to try to get into some more serious territory. It looks into kind of the mob justice aspect of this, where you have the entire town pursuing Michael, and then someone gets kind of caught in the crosshairs because they think that that person is Michael because no one knows what he looks like, and that person gets pursued. And then it kind of looks into, it asks this question of like, are we the monsters? Like, are we actually the villains here? And that works well in like a Frankenstein's type situation where you are pursuing someone who is not a monster. But in this film, Michael is very clearly a monster. He is a mindless killing machine. He's killed, I don't know, 16 people at that point. So no, the town is not the monster. They are overreacting and they shouldn't be doing this, but Michael is the monster. And it didn't really work for me because it wasn't tied right. It wasn't tied well together. Like, I couldn't really question like, oh my gosh, are we overreacting? Because there was like a mass murderer on the loose in their town. So yes, they were overreacting, but also there was a very real reason to be scared and a very real reason not to feel sympathy for that monster. So it just didn't really sit right. And the film kind of goes back to this theme of like mob justice and overreaction, and it it didn't do it. Like, it didn't really feel like this was the right movie for it. Maybe if they had established a different monster who actually was a misunderstood monster, that would have been different. But Michael was clearly a mindless killing machine, at least in this movie. And the last thing I didn't love is, I guess, Michael. And I think this is because of how they've pushed him in this film to be this kind of mindless killing machine. He wasn't that interesting to me. It just felt like a mindless automaton that murdered everything for no reason. Like, I didn't really understand why he was murdering. There didn't seem to be any sort of vengeance, any sort of this. It was just like Michael is killing everything all the time. And I guess sometimes it's because they're in his childhood home. Sometimes it's because they're just a house that he decides to go into. Sometimes it's because they're firefighters and they're coming after him, and so he just slaughters them. It felt like he was just, there was no real motivation to what he was doing. It was just, I'm going to kill, I'm going to kill, I'm going to kill. And it just didn't make him very interesting. You never saw any emotion from him. Every time that he's doing something, he just kind of breathes, and he moves very robotically, which I think that's his character. He doesn't have any motivation. But I think just because the film tried to get into more of a serious role, and they tried to kind of psychoanalyze him. Oh, how he's a child in the body of a man with a soul of an animal or something like that. They said he's a child in the body of a man with the mind of an animal, and they tried to kind of like evoke some sympathy for him, but you can't feel it when he just doesn't have any emotion or any backstory that makes you care about him. And I guess the last thing is the ending. The ending, I didn't really like the ending, and so let's go into the ending. The In the end, the town is up in arms trying to pursue Michael. They're trying to hunt him down. And eventually, Allyson, Cameron, who's Allison's boyfriend, and Lonnie, who's Cameron's dad, figure out that Michael is back at the Myers home, his childhood home, because of course he is. Like, why didn't they check that at first? I don't know. And so they get there, and they think he's there. And so Lonnie goes in first. He wants Allyson and Cameron to stay back because he doesn't want them to get hurt. And so Lonnie goes in first by himself. Again, horrible horror trope. Never do that. And as you would expect, he gets ambushed by Michael. You don't actually see this, but you hear a gunshot. And then Allyson and Cameron, rather than call the cops like they probably should have and said, hey, Michael's here, let's all get there, they go in as well, because of course. And so they're in the house. They're checking upstairs. They hear something upstairs. So they go upstairs and they split up upstairs. Again, why would you do that? That's not a very good idea. And so they're exploring the house upstairs, and Cameron eventually finds Michael in a closet. He knows he's there. He has the gun pointed at him, and then he just lowers the gun because of course he does. And then Michael pops out of the closet and attacks Cameron. And during this time, Allyson runs up and stabs Michael a couple times. She gets some really good, stabs at him. And then he turns around after getting stabbed like 4 or 5 times and throws her down the stairs. She hurts her leg. And so then Michael proceeds to kill Cameron in a very brutal way. It was a good horror scene, not a good scene for Allyson, but a good horror scene. After brutally beating Cameron and then killing him as he's going down the stairs, Michael goes down to take out Allyson. And when he's down there, Karen, who's Allison's mom, played by Judy Greer, is there as well. And she stabs him with a pitchfork and then takes his mask off of him. And Michael always wants his mask. So he kind of follows Judy Greer out into the street where she has his mask. And she kind of runs away a few houses down. And Michael's pursuing. And he comes to a street and he sees his mask in the middle of the street. So he walks out to it, picks up the mask, and boom, he is kind of ambushed. There's car lights turn on. There's cars on one side. Other cars pull up on the other side and kind of trap him in, and he's surrounded by this mob. And then the mob kind of goes to town. They beat him with like bats and 2x4s, and someone has a gun and shoots him like 4 or 5 times, and also shoots someone's hand in the process. And they basically just mob justice him until Judy Greer, Karen, takes a knife and gives the killing blow to Michael. And then that's it. Michael's dead. Everyone's happy. Everyone trick or treats. It's a good, happy ending. Or is it? No, it's not. So after that, Karen goes back to the house with Allyson to check on her in your classic horror film scene where I don't remember, but in my head they probably have police blankets around them and they're probably drinking coffee sitting on the stoop of the house, and you hear some commotion as uh they're talking about Michael and how he's this kind of automaton of anger. And you go back to the mob scene after they basically beaten him up, and Michael gets up and just starts slaughtering the mob, which again, like, he was pretty much dead. And I think that might be one of the issues I have with this is they keep talking about Michael as a man, but he's clearly not a man at this point. Like, I don't know if he's like a supernatural spirit or something, but like he gets stabbed 10 times, shot like 5 times, beaten. At this point, like, it's just kind of silly that he gets back up and still kills. Again, he basically kills the mob, which I think there were maybe like 10 or 15 people. So maybe his kill count's actually up to like 35. And then we switch back to Karen and Allyson. And Karen, I think, gets up and looks up at the window. They keep talking about how Michael would always stand at the window of his childhood home and look out at Hatfield. And at some point they say, like, oh, well, maybe he's actually looking at his reflection. He's seeing himself. He's not actually looking at Hatfield. He just sees that as a reflection. So Karen has like a vision of someone up there. And so she goes up to that room and looks out the window. And lo and behold, Michael's there behind her and he stabs her to death. And then that's the ending. Again, he somehow gets to this house surrounded by police and murders Karen. And that's the end. That's the end of Halloween Kills. Again, like, as you can tell from my description of the ending and some of the things I didn't love about this film, it didn't grab me. I was really hoping that this film would get me. I like horror. I liked the first film. I was hoping that this would continue. It just didn't do it for me. There was the pace. It was the fact that Michael's just this killing automaton. But you know what? Don't take my word for it. Maybe you'll like it more. Maybe some people in the comments will point out things I missed. That tends to happen. So it's Halloween Kills. It's coming to theaters and Peacock on October 15th, 2021. Check it out if you want to. Check it out in theaters if you're comfortable. Check it out on Peacock if you have that. I would recommend you probably stream it. I think, overall, it still has some good Halloween aspects of it. So I would definitely recommend streaming it. I don't know if I go to the theaters, but if you're comfortable and you want to go to the theaters, go ahead. Otherwise, you can stream it on Peacock, or you could maybe skip it. Up to you. But that's Halloween Kills. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to this channel. And please check out the other videos. There's other video reviews, there's interviews, there's unboxing videos. Every week I do a what to watch this weekend that includes recommendations for theaters, rental, and streaming. So I try to give a nice variety every week. So check those out. And thanks so much for watching.